Hello everybody, welcome to this week's bonus podcast where we are doing a classic character profile of Duggie the Crusher Ferguson. I'm Michael.
I'm Gemma.
Sorry, I should say I'm Michael the Crusher Dodson.
What, can't you think of your own name?
No, I want that one. It's alright, he's been dead 20 years. I can take it, it's up for grabs. We're chatting about this guy today who's, I kind of want to know. And I'm just going to throw this one to you straight away.
Me?
Yeah. Our listeners can think about this one as well, because I've been thinking about this. If you think about the character of Duggie Ferguson,
right,
what kind of springs to mind? Is it like, do you think, oh yeah, he was a good character, didn't really like him? Or honestly, is it, I don't really have much of an opinion or know about him?
All I know about Duggie Ferguson is him peering over the side of a set of stairs before he dies.
He was mostly before your time, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was in the show. I didn't watch it when he was in the show. I've seen some of his episodes. Mm-hmm. He seemed fine. Yeah, I think I would have liked him if I'd seen him.
You kind of caught him towards the end, didn't you, I think? Oh no, maybe you got about a good year of him. I don't know. I mean, is he a character that you would say, so he's not considered, would you say he's a popular character? Do you like him, or just no firm opinion, which is absolutely fine, I'm just interested.
Would I say he's a popular character?
Would you say that he's a popular character?
No, because he's dead.
Was he a popular? Is he looked back on?
250 episodes.
Yeah, I know. Okay, right. What I'm trying to get at here is,
go on then.
If you were to say Duggie Ferguson to me, my kind of gut reaction is like, oh yeah, Duggie. I like Duggie. He was great. He was a good guy. He was,
Yeah, I was scared of answering because I didn't know if I was wrong.
It wasn't a test.
Well, it literally always is a test.
But I wonder whether listeners think the same, because I feel...
He seemed fine. He seemed like a nice businessman. He's kind of like Johnny Connor.
Yeah, that is exactly... But he's not.
What I was wrong all along?
No, I think that everyone's kind of wrong, but I think we're allowed to be wrong. Because, as we will discover when we're going through Duggie's history today, he was actually not really that much of a nice guy for a lot of it, and I definitely had fond memories of him. But he was in classic Coronation Street on ITV just over the last couple of years, and I was really surprised at just what a nasty piece of work he was sometimes. He was like really cruel and cheating.
I think sometimes if an actor is really charismatic and likeable, you sort of don't really care what they do as a character. You're like, yeah, that's fine.
He was a guy that I liked to watch, and yeah, but it was definitely, it threw me at just how nasty he was watching him at times. So as we kind of go through this, I want to get everyone to keep in the back of their minds kind of the idea of why is he looked back on as fondly, I suppose. I think he's looked back on fondly. Let's see if we can find out why. Now, I'm going to be ending up doing most of the talking tonight, because Gemma is still poorly, still got a bad throat, bad cough, not feeling too good. She don't want to be filling this podcast. Didn't want to be filling the podcast with coughing. Right on cue, well done. So I'll throw things to you every now and then. Do interrupt me, because I don't want to soliloquise here.
Chuck stupid questions at me I don't have an answer for.
Like, what do you think of Duggie Ferguson?
That's like watching Eurovision when they kept asking people like really hard questions that they weren't prepared for. Like, how do you feel that the unity of Europe is demonstrated through the song? I don't know. I just turned up with my no pants on and danced around with a Windows logo on my t-shirt. I can't answer questions about politics.
I didn't think that. What do you think of not Tom Ferguson, Duggie Ferguson?
Because you had an answer in your mind.
No. I honestly didn't. I honestly didn't. I wanted to know. Like, do you hate him, or no opinion is absolutely fine. But anyway, let's go through and talk a bit about Duggie. Find out about his history. You're right. He was only in the show for 252 episodes. His time on the show spanned 1999. Yeah, 15th of October 1999 to the 6th of February 2002. So it wasn't too long, but I would say he was a pretty memorable stint, apart from obviously I've forgotten just what a git he was a lot of the time. So we don't have too much background information about him. We don't know how old he was when he was born, but we do know that he died on the 4th of February 2002, and I think lots of people, if you say Duggie Ferguson to them, they'll say that Richard Hillman victim. Sometimes Richard Hillman killed him, which isn't actually true, but that's something that there's an episode that definitely sticks in my mind. He was married before the show started, or no, before he was in the show, to Laura Ferguson, and he had a son, Tom, who was born in 1980. He was played by John Bowe. Who later went on into Emmerdale. I remember when we went to, I think it was the first British Soap Awards we went to, and he was there, and we were like, I don't think we realised that it was in Emmerdale at the time. So that was quite a nice thing. And I remember saying, like, oh yeah, Duggie, he played Duggie, he was brilliant. But anyway, so Duggie Ferguson was brought into the show in Coronation Street in 1999 as the father of Tom Ferguson. Now, I wouldn't be so cruel to ask you about what's your opinion on Tom Ferguson.
Tall.
Tallish, yeah. Tall, young, hairdresser.
He had sandy hair.
No, brown hair. You might be remembering somebody different here.
He was sentenced to 12 years in prison for causing death by dangerous driving.
I think you miss Vogel in there. So he was Tom Ferguson had been brought into the show in early 1999. He was a stylist at the salon, so he worked under Audrey and I think with Maria, maybe, I don't remember.
Oh yes, I don't know who that is.
Gemma has found a picture of him, no idea
who am I thinking of? Did Duggie Ferguson hang around with a guy who was kind of hard-faced and sandy-haired?
I don't know, maybe we'll find out as we go along. But I think he didn't hang around with Tom Ferguson very much. So the history between Duggie and Tom and his wife Laura was that Duggie, he was a bit of a celebrity in Weatherfield. He was kind of proto Tommy Orpington. Instead of being a football player, he was an ex-rugby league player. So by the time he came into the show, he was already known to some characters. I mean, I remember him walking into the Rovers and Les Basby going, "Oh, that's Crusher! Hey, fuck Crusher, let me buy you a drink." But he'd retired from rugby years before. He'd gone into the printing business. And the backstory.
He's like
what?
The one who's Corrie's dad, Brent.
Brent, yeah. I don't know what sort of printing he did. It might have been t-shirt printing.
Maybe he printed leaflets.
Maybe he sold ink cartridges. Don't know. Can't remember. Anyway, his the story with him and his wife is that she got sick with cancer when Tom was just 16. During that period, Duggie had carried on working, as an ex-rugby league player. He had a lot of charity fundraisers to go to, cutting of ribbons, just general...
Opening Poundlands.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. And Tom blamed him for not being there for his mum enough. And then when he was about, when Duggie was back from all his dues, he just took his frustrations about the whole situation on Tom. So it was a really, really fractured relationship that we walked in on when Duggie came into the show.
You haven't done the info.
I've done all of the info. What do you need to know?
Died 4th February 2002.
I've done all of that.
He was married to Laura Ferguson.
I've literally done all of that about 5 minutes ago. You were too busy doing pictures of what Tom Ferguson looked like. It's all right. Don't worry. You're sick. It's fine. So, I know you're not doing much of this. No, I'll
just do it.
I'll do this. So, Duggie Ferguson's first scene, when it was shown on ITV3 a couple of years ago, I was like, who the hell is this? What? He's a utter git. So Tom Ferguson is possibly, if you're going to rank who are the blandest characters on Coronation Street ever, he's going to be fairly well up there. He didn't have a whole lot about him, not at least that I remember. But, he was likeable enough, I suppose. And Duggie's, I can't remember whether it was his first or his second scene, but he comes into the salon and he's like this air of menace and disappointment. It's like... it's like when you have the villain walk into the saloon in a western and everybody stops and the piano stops a tinkling and everyone turns and looks at him. It's kind of like this, and he kind of comes in and he says to Audrey, I want the lad to cut my hair, because Audrey offers to do it first, and then he's like, right, shave it off. He like dares this son, we don't know he's his son at this point, I think, to shave all his hair off. And Tom's like, what, are you sure? And before long, we've got Duggie basically calling Tom a loser. He's saying, you've wasted your life. Because he was a proper, proper man, in inverted commas. He liked sport and beer and women and cars and that kind of thing. And Tom, as a stylist, nothing like this at all. And the disappointment and the disdain for Tom that was hanging in the air when Duggie walks in was just as clear as day. And I was watching it going, I thought that I thought you were a nice guy, Dougie. I'd forgotten this side of him completely.
But sometimes they bring characters in and they do that to them, don't they? They start off in with a certain way about them and then they never really carry it on. Like, come in with a bang and then they kind of settle into being normal.
Although, I mean, look, as we go ahead, we'll find out that there was definitely an element of this for Dougie. But I don't think that he really sunk to those nasty depths as he did. And you're right, it was clearly in with a bang, like, oh, here's, you know, Tom, who the lovable scamp who works in the salon. Here comes his nasty dad. But yeah, he was horrid. And then later on, he goes into the pub, and this is when Les sees him. Tom's there, and he ends up telling Tom, right, you give me the car keys, because Tom had driven there, I think, and Tom purposefully drops them on the ground, and Dougie's like, pick them up, and then he ends up roughing Tom up, and Natalie has to escort him out of the Rovers, and that was kind of, I think, the last we saw of him for a while. He was just a bit of a shock and out. And then he comes back a couple of months later. He's trying to rebuild bridges with Tom, so they'd softened him ever so slightly, and he's like, look, I was wrong. I spoke out of turn a little bit there. Let me help you set up your own hair salon in the Victoria Street development that I've just bought into. So this was Dougie's kind of first big story, that he was helping develop the Victoria Street, not the full length of it, obviously, that we know now. But back in 1999, there wasn't really much of Victoria Street to speak of. You kind of had, you walk down Coronation Street, turn left into Rosamond Street, and maybe there was a hint of a peek around the corner into Victoria Street, but you never saw it. But the Coronation Street or ITV or whoever wanted to expand a little bit into there, and Duggie Ferguson was the one who was doing it. And he doesn't like the idea that his son is a stylist. I mean, the very mention of the word stylist made Dougie's skin crawl, because he's like, you're a hairdresser, and Tom's like, I'm a stylist. But he says, look, I could at least stomach it if you were in charge of your own business. But
stylist is like the difference between paying 45 quid for a haircut or 55 quid.
Well, yeah, but I don't know what, Audrey's...
When you go to get your haircut as a lady, you have to select from different types of hairdressers. Did you know this?
No.
Normally, they'll be like, I don't know, like junior and then stylist and then senior stylist.
Really?
There's different types of job descriptions and they charge you more money depending.
God, I meant just go in and sit on the seat and then see who calls us up.
Flame your ear rolls.
I do, anyway. Okay. So anyway, Tom's like, no, don't want anything to do with you. Dougie's trying to make things right, and they just end up rowing over his mum's death again, and that's the end of that. So that's all we saw of Dougie in 1999, so we were definitely not supposed to like him. I don't know whether he was partly brought in to add a bit of spark or zhuzh or excitement or some kind of interest to bland old Tom. But it kind of worked, I suppose. But it wasn't too long before Tom was gone. I don't know whether this was the plan all along, to bring in Tom as like the early tester for the Ferguson family. Because, yeah, within the first few months of the year 2000 after Millennium, he was out of here. Sorry, I thought you looked like you were going to say something.
No,
then.
So he didn't last as long. His son lasted... No, he lasted longer than his son.
Yeah, years longer than his son. His son was like less than a year, I think, in the show.
It's quite a lot of people I'd wish their parents would turn up and just get rid of him.
I found an article from The Star which was published in March 2000, which gave an interesting insight into what people at the time thought of Dougie and what the purpose of Dougie being brought into the show was. And according to a Coronation Street insider from March 2000, John is very highly regarded, and so is his character Dougie. So this was only, 3 months into it, 3-4 months into his stint into Coronation Street. The insider continued, the show hasn't really had someone like him since those heady Len Fairclough days, and the two of them share many characteristics. Like Len, Dougie is as hard as nails. He's had his share of tragedies too. He's going to be a steadying influence on Weatherfield's bad boy, mainly because Steve is terrified of what might happen if he steps out of line. The word is that John can stay on the show as long as he wants. Producers want to turn him into a real core character in the months and hopefully years to come. He's going to fill a big gap because long-termers such as Ken Barlow and Mike Baldwin are edging towards OAP status. He's still there. Ken Barlow is going to outlive all of us. The street needs a middle-aged heartthrob who can get involved in all kinds of challenging storylines, from romances to physical confrontations. So there's an awful lot to unpick there, and we got this Len Fairclough comparison, and I kind of get that.
Yeah, me too.
Because Len Fairclough, back in the 60s and 70s, he was also not that nice a guy sometimes, wasn't he?
He was gruff and roughy-tufty. He had a nasty streak, but he was also supposed to be like the working class hero, wasn't he? You were supposed to like him, but, you know, fear him a little bit too. If you crossed him, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and as a businessman, because, you know, he was in charge of the builder's yard, he was ruthless. He was out for himself. He wasn't afraid to pull a few punches and be a bit of an arse to people. And so I think that those comparisons between those two are pretty apt, actually. Even in Dougie's early days, we were kind of getting a comparison between the two of them. But the fact that it says here that they wanted John Bowe to stay in the show for as long as he wants, well, it didn't work out that way. They seem to have, back in the early 2000s, like a long-term vision of, you know, keeping him in the show for years to come. And this is the type of character as well that I would say comes along every now and then, stays for a few years and go, you know, Owen Armstrong is in the same ilk, isn't he?
One.
But yeah, it didn't turn out that way, as we will find out. But a middle-aged heartthrob who can get involved in all kinds of challenging storylines. Is Dougie a heartthrob?
I'm just going to be polite and say the barrier for entry for that, for men, is a bit lower than for women.
I think as somebody
Women aren't as picky. We're not as superficial as you guys. You know, women want to be a middle-aged heartthrob. She's got to have her boobs up to her nostrils and her waist pulled as tight as possible, wearing as many high skirts as she can, with her hair teased to hell. And man could just rock up with no hair on his head and go, "Look, ladies, I've got a business."
I mean, he certainly didn't have the long locks or. I mean, he was just a guy, but I think what he did have was confidence, and.
That goes a long way with the ladies, Michael.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, I don't know much in the ways of that kind of thing, but I believe that women do like a bit of confidence. And, you know, he was rich. He was a business owner. He was an ex-sportsman. He went to all the shindigs. He probably had a big old house. It's
weird how often unattractive rich men get quite a lot of women, isn't it? So I don't know what that means.
I don't think he was unattractive necessarily.
I'm not trying to be rude about anybody, so I'm not going to say any more.
But yeah, I think, you know, yeah, when it comes
average
to
is a fine description, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that confidence certainly did him well with the ladies at times. Although a lot of his story in this first year was about difficulties in the old bedroom department.
Women can't get away with just being confident because we just get called cocky cows.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Mouthy
it
bitches.
Sucks, doesn't it? It sucks. What can we do? So he started working on those old townhouses on Victoria Street with Steve as the eventual contractor, and that involved putting Roy's Rolls in there. Because that was originally on Rosamond Street, that moved to Victoria Street. I can't remember how far down they went. Was the builder's yard then? I can't remember. There wasn't a whole lot. We got like the gates to the Nuttall Brewery, I think we saw for the first time at the other end of Victoria Street. Streetcars was around about then as well. So it was a really nice opportunity to expand the set from the fairly constricted roads that they had up until that point. Tom, as I said earlier, don't want to know about his dad. He still blames him for not making things too easy for the family when Mum was on her last legs, and eventually he just leaves the area, and that was the last we saw of him, never to be heard from ever again. Even when Dougie dies, when he dies, Audrey or someone contacts Tom, and he's apparently cutting hair on the cruise ships, and he's too busy to come for his dad's funeral.
That's what Glenda would be like. That's probably why Glenda didn't get any money in the will.
Yeah. So when Steve and his partner find some Victorian fireplaces in the houses that they're converting, it's so funny thinking about Victoria Street like that, isn't it? About these old Victorian houses that we never saw before because there was nothing there.
Yeah.
So all we've seen is what they're like once they've been redeveloped. But he finds these Victorian fireplaces, rips them out and sells them before discovering that Duggie had already earmarked them. So he blots his copybook somewhat there with Duggie, and that's not a good place to be in. So Duggie makes Steve hand over his £1,500 profits in order to keep his job. So, strong leadership there, Duggie.
Shenanigans.
Marking your territory, asserting your dominance. That's what women like, apparently. And the first woman to come along to turn Duggie's head was Debs Brownlow. Natalie's sister, played by...
Gabrielle Glaister.
Recently played...
Bob.
Yeah, Bob in Blackadder. Or Fern.
And she also does the audiobooks for the Coronation Street.
Yes, she does. You're right. I always forget that.
By Maggie Sullivan.
Yeah, so Gabrielle Glaister was... I love Blackadder around this period. Maybe a little bit earlier I must have watched it. But it did not click with me at all that the person playing Debs Brownlow was Bob. I mean, I know Bob was only in 2 episodes of Blackadder, but she was a pretty memorable...
A trailblazer.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Flashheart was only in those 2 episodes as well. But, I forgot his name already, he's so bland. Tom, I don't think that Debs Brownlow has gone down in anyone's book as a memorable favourite character.
No, but it's a really distinctive name in my mind for some reason. I know Debs Brownlow. If you say Debs, I say Debs Brownlow.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I don't know why it's stuck in my head. I don't even think I've seen an episode with her in.
I don't know whether you have, maybe 1 or 2. So anyway, she shows up on the scene in February and takes a shine to Duggie, and he's like, oh, brilliant, I'm going to take her out, do a bit of schmoozing with her, go to the rugby club, a few functions, a few charity auctions, but then you get another example of her being an absolute git. There's a scene where they're at the bar in the pub, and he's saying, it was something like, I've got another rugby do coming up, and Debs is just out, on his arm on the side saying, oh, I'm free on that evening, and he kind of turns round to her and said, nobody asked you, or it's something like that. I don't remember now. Like, completely out of nowhere. And it's like, yeah, what an utter git that he was. So she's utterly humiliated by this. He apologises later and says, look, I'm sorry. You're the first woman I've been out with since my wife died.
Why'd you talk to your wife, you bastard?
I know, exactly. So
Are you sure she died of cancer?
Well, so the story goes. And so throughout this year, we just get an awful lot of Debs and Duggie in and out of relationships, often through no fault of Debs, but Duggie being a bit of a git to her. She becomes quite frustrated as well when he takes her back to his house one evening and he kisses her, but he doesn't take things further. So I think maybe Debs was a bit of a goer and he wasn't. And but he's a bit I think it was a bit of an impotent story, and he doesn't and he struggled in the whole bedroom department, as particularly after his wife died, and he didn't know about, maybe he felt like he was betraying her a little bit, but it had been so long. And yeah, so he was obviously very ashamed of this, and as the roughy tufty, as you put it, chauvinistic, real man alpha male kind of guy, that's not the kind of thing that you want to be having spread around about you.
But if he's really a roughy tufty man's man, chauvinist pig who's a ladies' man, he's only been out with one lady since his wife died.
He's shy. He
can't be a roughy,
puts up a front.
Shy ladies' man.
No, well, maybe it was just because
mischaracterised.
It was because he knew that he had these problems downstairs that he didn't want to make the first move with a woman. I don't know. And it took an exciting character like Debs Brownlow to finally get him out of his shell.
Debs Brownlow is my favourite.
Just not out of his pants. So dead body is found in Victoria Street
that
in early 2000.
That doesn't help the libido, does it?
No, it's a bit of a turn off, isn't it? Really,
if it
finding
was a turn on,
corpse.
I'd be a bit worried. It's very well documented what happens if you get turned on by dead bodies and you're a man.
So, yeah. Although, no, I'm not going to make an inappropriate joke there. I almost had one, but I won't.
Tell me later.
Dougie's mostly annoyed about this though, because it means the work has to stop. Later turns out that this is Tony Horrocks, the ne'er-do-well son of Natalie Horrocks, and so the nephew of Debs Brownlow. So that's probably caused a few issues over the dinner table, a few awkward conversations. He'd been put in there. Do you remember who killed Tony Horrocks?
Was it that man?
Yes, it was the man. The man
the
with
one
the
that
actor.
menaced people in car parks?
Yes.
Who was called...
Go on, you can do it. You've been doing this podcast for 12 years, Gemma. You know all the characters.
That's right, stitch me up. What was his name? He died. He tried to kill Jim McDonald.
Yeah, what was his name?
Johnny.
No.
Jimmy.
He had a 3-letter first name. One of the letters was a Z because he was cool and hard. That's right, it's Jez Quigley.
Yeah, Jez.
Oh my god. Gemma's sick, everybody. We played that on everything.
You know I'm bad with names, it doesn't matter.
The Gemma is pretty terrible with names anyway. And she never really watched much.
That's why I didn't change my surname. I got married. I get too confused.
Too confused. Well, you got an X in the surname, which is the second coolest letter to have in a name after Z.
I'd never give up my X.
Building work eventually resumes. Dougie cuts the ribbon at the opening, and DNS Hardware. That was another early opening.
Oh yeah,
there. So that's where the prima donna is now.
Sally.
Yeah, exactly. Danny. I can't remember.
That's where her. Maybe that's where her. Remember, we didn't know why she had a lorry that was on fire. Yes,
we did the other week, didn't we? Maybe it was to do with that. It's like that particular unit changed quite a few times in those early years, didn't it? And now it's just been prima donna for coming on with 20 years. Make some changes. Come on, Coronation Street. You don't need to own a kebab shop there all the time. But anyway, that's all open. The job's done. So what is Dougie to do now? Well, on the love life front, things are not going too well. There's another disastrous date for them later in that month when he has a panic attack when she invites him to bed. And she's like, well, screw this for a game of soldiers. I'm going off with Dev instead. He's a real
man.
He's a real man. He beds all the ladies. That's clearly what Dev wants.
He knows how the bits work. We know that for sure.
It's probably a bit confusing having Dev and Deb together because they're so close, those names.
Hey, Dev.
Yeah, what would their shipping name be?
Debs.
Anyway, he ends up humiliating her when...
Brownhan.
Yeah. Natalie overhears Dev telling his mates, no, it wasn't, it was his aunt, that she is not exactly wife material.
What the hell
Natalie,
does Debs got to do?
I don't know, poor old Debs.
What's wrong with Debs?
She just wants to get a bit of satisfaction.
She wants to get her end away and have a nice time.
Yeah.
And people going around talking about how good she might be about being a wife.
Turns out all right for her in the end.
Maybe she don't want to marry you, Dev.
So
maybe she wants to be Debs Ferguson, not Debs Allahan.
Debs gives it one more go with Dougie. Eventually, they manage to make a go of it in bed, and it all works. Hooray!
Good. And if you have any questions, go to
go and ask your mum and dad.
itv.com/advice for information about how to take Viagra, I suppose.
I don't know how it worked in the end, how his impotence was solved, but maybe it was just through pure persistence by Debs. And he's like, okay, fine.
We won't ask questions.
No, don't ask questions. That's rude. So
we're English.
After the medical centre is opened, because he's also involved in all that kind of
building
area
it.
there. Building it, yeah. Dougie gets a bit drunk. This is in August 2000. And he humiliates Vinnie Sorrell, who was Natalie's other half at the time.
Natalie Horrocks.
Yes. By challenging him to an... You're very good. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
By challenging to an arm wrestling contest with Natalie as the prize. That sounds...
Totally fine. That's okay. That's just like jousting, isn't it?
It was a bit of a joust. I don't know whether Natalie was there, dropping her hanky for the victor. But... Just
drawing on our rich cultural heritage.
Anyway, to make up for it, once their head's clear the next day, Dougie's like, well, yeah, I'll just bet you your wife, bet you your girlfriend. What I'll do for you, Vinny, job for life, you can work for me. Vinny's not exactly thrilled to find out, though, that rather than being a builder, it's a hired heavy to evict difficult tenants from Dougie's properties.
So no apology for Natalie?
No, she'll get over it. It's fine. She's
Here you go,
made
Vinny.
tough
I'm sorry
stuff.
I humiliated you by stealing your girlfriend. And she's like, excuse me.
Well, her girlfriend and also the sister of the girl that Dougie's supposed to be dating.
Also, she's got a dead son.
So not only was Dougie good at developing and printing apparently, and a bit of rugby, he also owned a load of buildings and rented out the flats there. So he had a load of tenants, but when he wanted them out, in come their heavies. So one such tenant is Phil Simmons. Now,
who?
We might recognise that name recently if you're listening to this as we record it in May 2024, because Phil Simmons was rapist to be, who ended up, raping Toya the following year.
A child.
Fathering a child, yeah. Does he know about it? Are we going to have a return to Phil Simmons? But anyway, when Phil first came into it, and I assume that the whole rape story had been planned in advance, and this was I don't know, 7-8 months before it happened. He was just a friendly neighbour of Toya. They were mates. They lived in flats, neighbouring flats, and Dougie wants him out of there. So this whole story sets Toya up to be a little bit of a thorn in Dougie's side for the future. And that was, again, something that I'd completely forgotten about when I was watching it on the classics recently, that Dougie and Toya were like arch nemesis for a little bit, and he was really mean to her. She ends up she's working in the Rovers. I can't remember whether she was then or later, but he was just vile to her. But with Toya, she gives as good as she gets. We're seeing shades of it, I guess, a little bit with how she's treating Rowan at the moment.
Not as much as this, though.
Standing up to the oppressor.
That feisty Battersby spirit.
She's not. Yeah, she was. I think she was probably feistier back then. It's fair to say. But anyway, she gets evicted herself, moves into the Rovers, and basically continues to make a bit of a nuisance out of herself by giving a list of everyone who Dougie has unlawfully evicted to the Gazette. And then the Gazette prints a derogatory article about him and all his shady business dealings, which leads to the council dropping him as their developer.
Uh-oh.
So I guess, I said that Dougie was pretty cruel to Toya, but maybe she had it coming.
You're trying to say she's annoying, so she deserves it.
She was standing up for justice, and Toya is still very much like that. She was more so back in the day. When was this? 2000. So we're past the spider period, I think. But she's still, she likes to stand up for what's right. She didn't think it was fair that all these people were getting chucked out of their flats with no notice or for no reason. So, do you just talk it out, Toya. You don't need to sell him to the papers.
Rat him out.
So, Dougie, who's now in a bit of a dire financial strait because the council won't employ him to develop any more properties, has to sell his house to Dev for £50,000 less than the asking price.
It's a lot of money.
And then he had to pay off Phil Simmons as well, who's taking him to court. He also puts the rent up to the hardware store by 25%, so that sucks for Danny and Sally. And he moves in with Debs, although she soon gets a bit fed up of being treated like an employee, because basically he uses her house as an office. He takes over it as like, right, this is the business address of Ferguson Financial, whatever, Ferguson Property Development Limited, and she's like, you're treating me like a secretary, you're treating your house like my office, you're dumb, you're done. So they split up for a bit, little bit. He's able to charm her back because he's a fairly
likeable
persuasive guy. So meanwhile, Vinny, remember him, the older Victor, resigns from his job, and then in revenge, Dougie tells the Gazette that all these unlawful evictions were actually Vinny's fault. So Dougie is fairly vengeful and vindictive against pretty much everybody that ever wrongs him. So
makes for good drama.
It made for good drama. It really, really did. Watching it a few years ago, I was really enjoying all of this stuff.
Not taking any crap from anybody.
Nope, he certainly wasn't. So the Gazette then prints Dougie's rebuttal to Toya's claims, but Debs isn't happy to see that he's mentioned his late wife in this article to try and get a little bit of sympathy. Oh. So she's like, right, I'm finished with you again. How many times did she dump him over the course of this year? 4, 5 maybe? I don't know.
I say Deb's brown nose. One of my main things I say about her, she's flighty.
Yeah, she is a little bit. So anyway, the story with Dougie and Debs ends with her dumping him, then going off with Vinny, who, let's not forget, is supposed to be going out with her sister Natalie, and then they bugger off to Southampton together. And live possibly happy ever after, because it's lovely here in Southampton.
We take anyone in.
We do. All of Weatherfield's rejects and refugees all come down to Southampton eventually.
Yeah.
Alec Gilroy, he's down here for a bit. Peter was in Southampton for a little bit.
Got very good transport.
Christine
links.
Hardman, didn't she move down to Southampton in the end?
Go to the New Forest for a nice day out.
So anyway,
enjoy our many museums.
They're gone. Vinny has taken all of the money from Duggie's tenants. As a little bit of going away cash, and that's the last we see of them. So that kind of is the end of that little chapter in Duggie's story. The most important thing he does next is one of the moments that, if you were to say to me, what's an enduring memory of Duggie that you have, I would always come to this, because this is the 40th anniversary episode of Coronation Street, the live episode where the council are threatening to tarmac the cobbles.
Peter turns up, exactly. Everybody does a thing when they look up at the camera.
At the end, and Duggie's the one that saves the day here, because the bulldozers or whatever it was were just about to move in on the cobbles, and he arranges a phony preservation order on the cobbles, telling the council guys that they can't tarmac there. And do you remember it? They had Noddy Holder coming in as one of Duggie's mates, saying, "Hey, I've got it. I've got the preservation order." Oh no, that was a bit Scouse, wasn't it? He said it in a Brummie accent.
He said,
obviously.
"It's Christmas.
It's preservation." And Duggie is the hero of the 40th anniversary. And when I think of Duggie, one of the first pictures that comes into my mind is everybody kind of crowding around him saving the day, the champagne corks popping. And I think that's one of the reasons why I look back at him and thinking, yeah, he was a nice guy. He saved the cobbles from tarmac, evil tarmac.
Into cultural preservation.
Well, whatever the reasons were, he ended the year a hero, and
Good for you, Duggie.
Also in partnership with Fred and Mike with the Rovers, because
I remember this.
With all the excitement going on with the 40th anniversary and Deb's buggering off, Vinny leaving her, Natalie decides time is come for me to hang up my bar towel, I guess. Leave the show. I'm going to sell up to the boozy chain, and the pub was going to become the Boozy Newt. And it came to the locals to try and drum up the cash to take it together. Well, they did, and it was Duggie Ferguson, Fred Elliott, Mike Baldwin, all buy in together.
Yeah, this was weird.
And this was the debut of a very strange, but quite a fun period to watch in the Rovers. Very tumultuous and tempestuous. And is that the right word?
Yeah.
I don't know. Uppity.
They're all really buffety. Big alpha males, aren't they? They're all very set in their ways. They all own their own business.
They liked the idea of owning the pub, but didn't want to actually have anything to do with it.
And they're all very stubborn, and they're all big fish in little ponds. And
they're used to being the boss.
Yeah.
Mike in charge of the factory for who knows how many years. Fred, he's
in
got
charge of Ashley. Yeah.
The butchering business. He doesn't have to answer to anyone.
He's the king of black pudding in the northwest.
Exactly. Duggie's got his own business. So the idea that these two guys Three guys, sorry. That's a bit Monty Python. 3, sir. You don't get that because you don't like Monty Python or Holy Grail.
Silly.
Had to get together. There was a lot of butting heads there. Oh, it was a disaster right from the start. They couldn't decide on anything. They ended up drawing straws to see who would be the named licensee. It was Duggie. But basically, the first few months are just stories of them trying to one-up each other and go behind each other's backs.
Wasabi peas.
No, you're
reducing the price of hot pots.
You're thinking of Toya. They wouldn't want to reduce the price of anything, those guys. They were
Heineken
all about...
Zero.
No. They weren't ahead of their time. Can you imagine Duggie Ferguson? What would he think of Heineken Zero?
He'd think it was pig swill.
Yeah, drink for... I'm not going to say.
He'd say it's basically water.
So,
feed it to babies.
That ends the year 2000 for Duggie. He'd been a bit of a git all year. I guess that there had been some kind of sympathy that had been garnered for him in terms of, he's not able to get it up in bed, and that's a bit sad for him, isn't it? It's a serious problem. He saved the day for the 40th anniversary. But yeah, he was a git.
It's
and
like imagine if you
2001 he
wanted to
continued
have a
being
nice
a git.
burger and your teeth fell out.
Exactly.
You wouldn't like that at all, would you? You'd find that very annoying.
Wait a minute, what's that an
It
analogy
drives me
for?
up. Having erectile dysfunction.
Oh.
You want to have a burger, your teeth fall out.
Yes, I guess.
What am I supposed to do now? What?
Like
Gum
that.
it? It's not going to be satisfying at all.
So
Might as well not bother.
Well, he's got a new set of Nashers.
The worst thing is, you can't even get thin from that having sex, can you? It's exercise you're missing out on.
Oh yeah. Anything else?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I'm going to carry on talking about Duggie Ferguson anyway. He just go off on one. Let me tell you.
So colour.
We talked earlier about the fact that in early 2000 they'd positioned the character of Duggie Ferguson to be, you know, the main man of the street. He was going to be the alpha male. He was going to be everything was going to revolve around him. Now.
Cock of the walk.
He was cock of the walk. He was head of the Rovers return. He was the named licensee, and he was actually the joint second most featured character of 2001 with Gale. So we'd had this big year in 2000. 2001 was only bigger for him, but it was actually we were already getting towards the end of his stint on the show already. So. Chaos in the Rovers at the beginning of the year. The Mike, Fred and Duggie are just drinking away all the profits. Liz is the manageress of the pub at this time and they're getting her back up by interfering too much. And Duggie's one of his ideas is to have staff uniforms. So knowing what these men are like, you know, they've got these really revealing, low-cut bits of material. I can't remember what they said to Betty, whether they actually wanted her to wear it or whether it was like, of course this doesn't apply to you, Betty, no one wants to see that. But you did have Toya working there and Gina Gregory at the time.
Gina!
Yeah, Gemma's original favourite character, but can't for the life of us remember why.
Yeah. I'm not going to say she's gone down in history in my mind, but she was my early favourite.
No, they don't like this. They don't want uniforms to begin with, but having these horrible bits of fabric tied around them. So Toya says we're on strike. They set up a picket line outside the pub. Liz, I think, I can't remember what she quits as well, and then in comes Linda Sykes.
Linda Sykes.
I can't remember. No, she's not married to Mike at this point. Why is she?
She's
I
rough.
can't remember. Anyway,
She's
she comes in.
tufty.
She's like, well, don't worry. I'll run the Rovers for you, Mike. And she ended the strike. She offered them a 10% pay rise.
Scab.
Happy days. So she also arranges for Duggie to move into the pub. Toya is not happy with this at all because she's living there too. So you got these arch rivals living under the same roof. What could go wrong? So things do, to be fair, start to thaw between them a little bit earlier in spring 2001 when Toya cuts her finger and then Duggie takes her along to the medical centre.
What happened there then?
I don't know. I can't remember.
She
Not
was
much
cutting
particularly.
a lemon or something and it kind of rolled away.
Yeah, let's say that. Let's say it was that. So Duggie and Mike's next idea is to turn the Rovers into a family pub. That all turns into a bit of a disaster. Children are banned again.
Good.
David Platt comes in there. He's like, goes over to the bar. He's like, two cocks when you're ready, Betty love. And they're like, we're not having this.
Get out.
Not having this. I think
Cancel it.
Yeah, and so back, get rid of the kids. That don't work. It's a bit like Jenny and Daisy coming up with all their crackpot ideas to try and turn a profit in the pub at the moment. But they haven't come up with, they haven't made it into a children's pub. Maybe Jenny should try that again.
A children's pub, Michael. That is a good idea.
Children welcome pub.
Children's pub.
Adults not allowed. So in February, Duggie is struck off the council's list of repute builders. Again, I guess that happened last year.
How did you get back on there?
Probably greased a few palms. Few backhanders.
Greased a few poles.
Yeah. Anyway, structural faults are found in the medical centre, so he's off the list.
But it's fine now.
And Dougie's like, look, I need out of this business partnership. This is clearly not working. I'm the only one that's taking it seriously, and this was great. This is a brilliant little ruse by Duggie here.
Do you think there's going to be a comeback on that medical centre's structural instability?
Maybe it will. Maybe that's what's happened to Moira. Maybe a ceiling tile's fallen on her and nobody's noticed yet.
Our new producer, Kate Brooks.
Yeah.
Kate, I know you're listening.
Just in case you're thinking
about... Do you want
an
idea? The medical centre just collapses.
Yeah.
Because it's been established over 20 years ago that there was something wrong with it.
I don't know what they did with it in the end. Anyway, I was telling you about Dougie's ruse. So he's saying, right, I want out of this. Let's get the pub valued. They do the Fred and Mike's. Well, all of their shares are revealed to be worth a lot less than they'd expected. So it had really tanked in value over the first couple of months of the year. And Mike and Fred are like, right, we're out of this as well. So let's all sell up to Hamilton Griffiths Holdings, who seem to be really interested in buying this. Thing is, Hamilton Griffiths Holdings was actually Duggie's business. He was the main investor in it. So now he's the sole owner. He's the sole owner. He's tricked Mike and Fred into basically passing their share. What a brilliant trick.
Nice one. I think that's great.
And I think it should be celebrated. And, you know, the fact that it's happened to Mike, who is the king of underhand deals and shady business deals and trying to, you know, do and not...
Get one over on everybody.
He's a proper get-her-over-er, is Mike. Brilliant.
Got bamboozled by the man.
Yeah, and I think that's possibly another reason why I maybe look back on Duggie fondly, was that even though he was a bit of a git, you got to respect him for some of the tricks that he pulled. It's like, yeah, fair play to you, mate. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, with all of this going on, Phil which one was it? Simmons, Jennings and someone else. He's still putting together this libel case against Duggie. And he asked Toyah to be his main witness.
What?
Phil?
Yeah, why?
Because I think Duggie is saying that Phil's a nasty piece of work and he's making out that I threw him out unlawfully, but actually I didn't. It was all to do with this. And he says, right, Toyah, can you be my main witness for this? And Toyah's like, look, I don't really like Duggie and everything, but I can't really speak out against my boss, so sorry, no. Bit of a mistake there, possibly, Toyah. So, Weights and Measures come into the pub next.
Oh, and no!
Weights and Measures is the TV licensing van of the pub world, isn't it?
Bring them back.
Once every 20 years or so, they'll come in, they'll get out their little briefcase.
They screw up everyone's life for like 3 episodes.
Pouring little spirits into mini bottles and twirling them round and stuff.
I don't think so.
And so, it turns out that the whiskey's been watered down.
What?
Duggie suspects it's Toyah, sacks her. It's actually Peter Barlow, who's a barman there at the time. He's been helping himself on the sly.
He's an alcoholic.
This is before the alcoholic story, but...
What's he doing then?
He's just fancying a bit of booze.
Who's really looking at how much whiskey's in a bottle?
Well, clearly nobody, according to Peter, but...
Why is he watering it down then? Just take it.
Anyway, serious tough time, Gemma.
I'd go on a one for me, one for you basis if I'm a barmaid.
Serious stuff time. This is when Toyah was raped.
Yeah.
And impregnated, apparently.
No.
So this was...
I hate it like that. You make it sound like she's abducted by aliens.
This was Easter, Happy Easter, 2001. It was kind of like, look back on
Coronation Street's like, let's just ruin it.
Well, the fact that it was kind of done as a whoddunit as well wasn't necessarily to the best of tastes.
It hasn't been looked upon fondly, I think.
No, not really. But go on.
I just, I think that Georgia Taylor did a great job.
She did.
And it was a very hard-hitting story, and I think you can be forgiven a little bit for not really fully understanding, like, the ramifications of stories. Over 20 years ago, things were very different. They wouldn't handle it the same way as they do now.
No, possibly not. But
sometimes you make mistakes and you learn from them, and I think Coronation Street definitely did.
Yeah, but like you said, the performances in there, first class. Georgia Taylor, wow! If you see that episode, she was acting her little socks off for such a young age as well. I know.
At that age,
Janice was brilliant. Vicky Entwistle, Bruce Jones held his own as well. They were fantastic, and that was, I think we said recently, I think it was an hour and a bit. That was the longest ever episode of Coronation Street, the one following the rape. But anyway, this is important in Duggie's story because he is on the suspects list for a while. Obviously, he has spurned Toyah, and so the police are investigating who had...
Duggie didn't spurn Toyah.
Well, he sacked her from the pub.
It's not quite... Yeah, but spurned doesn't mean that, does it?
Oh, I don't know. I tried to use
You get fired.
sometimes.
I'm spurning you.
Spurned by my boss. Anyway, they get a DNA test eventually, and it rules him out. Doesn't rule out, also rules out pregnancy probably, but...
No more questions.
Let's not go back to that one. So, one day Phil comes to the Rovers and he says to Duggie, look, this case is getting out of hand.
Yeah.
I will settle for £1,000 out of court. And Dougie's like, no way, I don't settle out of court. I'm in the right. I'm Duggie Ferguson. Do you know who I am? He also tells him that Toyah's been raped. Not long after this, the rapist is revealed to Do we know none of them, Phil?
It was me, actually.
Phil calls Toya's name and she remembers it back from the night.
Yeah. Well.
So, anyway,
very serious topic.
Very serious topic. We've spoken about it very recently on the podcast.
Yeah.
Still relevant all these years later. Who'd have thought? Certainly not the people who invented the story then. So, Duggie drafts Shelley...
Is Duggie not dead yet? No, okay.
No, he's got a while to go. He drafts in Shelley Unwin to replace Toya at the pub because she's been fired. Now she's going through all this.
Is this her intro?
Yeah, this was Shelley. This is Shelley's introduction to the show. She was brought in as like an old mate of Duggie's from the rugby club, so she had a lot of respect for him. She was a very popular character, so that kind of, it was a real dream team, those two of them together. Fantastic introduction for her. So that kind of, we're into the summer of 2001 now, and I found another news article from July 2001. This is the Sunday People, and according to this article, Corrie star John Bowe has begged scriptwriters to give him a macho makeover. He says, since Duggie's fling with Debs, there have been no women in his life. Blokes on building sites still shout, "Oi, Duggie, can't you get it up?" I want to make it known that Duggie had the problem, not me. I'm the father of 4 kids.
We don't know the context of this. It could have been a joke.
I don't know, but you just don't. You don't think of the consequences of making
people impotent,
making characters impotent.
Willy-nilly making people impotent.
No. So he fancies a girlfriend, does John Bowe. So let's see how that turns out for him as the second half of 2001 rolls along.
How would you have made Duggie macho? I think he should have got a big dog.
He was already macho.
Like a big, scary dog.
He could have had one of those XL bully dogs before they were made illegal, couldn't they?
And like a tattoo of like, maybe the Union Jack and like the Queen on one side. And like a British Bulldog on the other side.
I'd put like a pair of rugby posts. I think having a tattoo of a rugby ball is pretty macho.
No, a rugby ball on the top and a pair of like boxing gloves on the bottom. And then underneath like... Britain's never, never, never shall be slaves or something like that. Really cool.
Well, they didn't do any of that. And
maybe like a little pint.
Couple of little mini stories for Duggie in the second half of the year. Go off on one, honestly. So this was a good one too.
I think I want to be a tattooist.
Do you remember when Fred was going out with Eve Sykes, Linda's mum?
Yeah.
And she loses her job at the Turk's Head.
Yeah.
So Fred's like, I say, Duggie, can you give my lovely lady, Eve, a job at Rovers? I'll even pay for her myself. I'll pay her wages if you make her feel good by giving her a job here. And Duggie's like, ka-ching.
I remember this from when we did Fred Elliott.
When we did Fred Elliott character profile just recently. Well, what happened then?
It was terrible. It was a bad move, wasn't it?
Because
she was crap.
No.
I thought she was a bit rubbish. And
she was great. She was brilliant. So good.
Well, she found out that she wasn't being paid properly, and she got mad.
She was mad. Yeah, she got livid that Fred was bankrolling Duggie, but the Duggie side of it was that he was like, well, if somebody else is paying her wages, I'm going to put her on to work
that's right.
all the time.
I thought she was rubbish for some reason. I'm sorry.
No, she was great. She was a natural behind the bar. But yeah, Duggie just completely takes advantage of the situation. Yet again, Fred's left with egg on his face because of Duggie's superior conniving skills, basically. Dougie tries his best. John Bowe wants Duggie to get a girl. Duggie asks Shelley out on a date, and she's like, no, I just agreed to go out with Peter, actually. And there were, Duggie was, how old must he have been when he was in the show? 50s?
I would just say that.
Shelley, not 50s, let's say.
20s, 30s?
Late 20s, early 30s, yeah. So but I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he's got an eye for the younger lady.
Do we?
Women,
caps, no,
not if you got a man with confidence, like we said.
And he's rich. If he's rich and he's confident and he's older than you, get in there.
You also had the story that year of him going to bed and finding a dead woman in there. That was how dead his love life was at the moment. He
went to bed and there was a dead lady in his bed.
Yes, this was Edna Miller.
Well, that makes sense, but it makes it sound a bit like he was rolling about and he was like, what the hell is this down the bottom of the bed?
No, she was just there on the side. This was Edna Miller, the harbinger of doom, who worked at the factory for a couple of years, and her kind of shtick was that she would she would foresee death everywhere and just be completely dour and depressing and like say, oh, you're going to die soon. And there was one time where she was having a little girls' drink in the Rovers with the rest of the factory.
A little girls' drink? It sounds like a Shirley Temple.
A girls' she's having a drink with the ladies from the factory and she's like, oh, there's death. And it turned out that she died. She got a bit too drunk at the do, went upstairs into Duggie's bed because Duggie was away at a rugby function.
Sat up, broke wind,
quite
and
probably
died.
And then Duggie comes into bed and he finds her in there. So that was a barrel of laughs there. So
no one talks about the terrible things that happen when you die. But I bet you had to change them sheets.
Quite possibly. So with that lovely image in my mind, Sunita comes along. So this was Coronation Street setting up Duggie with a woman who was actually quite good for him. Another very young woman. She was must have been in her 20s as well. Oh, yeah. Sunita, who later Sunita Allahan, but before getting involved with Dev, she was going out with Duggie.
She'd go with any old man with a business.
I thought that at first, when I was rewatching it recently, that this was a very odd mismatched pair, and I didn't really get what she would see in him. But I suppose the fact that she was married to Dev, who was quite her senior, wasn't he?
Yes, I just said old man business.
I think that she did have daddy issues. She had a very poor relationship, very fractured relationship with her own parents. Sunita comes into the show when they're trying to marry her off to someone, do an arranged marriage. So I think one might say that she just didn't have an older male figure to look up to in her life.
I think she's just the Anna Nicole Smith of Coronation Street. Yes,
I would say that if I knew who that was. Don't fill me in on it. I don't think we have got time for another detour on this. So, Sunita tells Gina that she's got a thing for Duggie.
Both dead. I'm just going to say both dead.
Who?
Her and Anna Nicole Smith.
And Duggie now.
Don't be chasing old men.
So, Duggie makes a fool of himself one time by trying to kid Shelley. Oh, sorry. It does say kid in the notes, but I mean kiss. Shelley while having dinner with her.
Yeah.
I've been doing well up to this point.
I think you've been doing much better than when I do it with you. I think you should do this by yourself from now on.
No,
this is much better than when I do it.
Well, it's because I'm the person that writes the notes.
I know.
I've started sending you the notes to zhuzh you up for it. To say, remember that.
But I can't tell that you mean kiss and not kid.
No, it's fine. Anyway, so as far as Shelley's concerned, they're just friends. Next day, Dougie's like, well, I'm going to go and ask Sunita out then. I've dumped Shelley. So, because he, wants to save face. Yeah. Sunita's like, no, I know that is not true at all. She's like, Shelley's just told me exactly what's happened. But anyway, he sends her a big bunch of flowers. Fine, does the job. They start dating.
Oh, it's peony season.
Yeah.
Michael.
When is?
Peony season.
When?
Now.
Stop distracting me.
I want some peonies, please.
No. Dougie ends up kind of... The age gap soon becomes apparent that this could cause a bit of a problem for Sunita because she's going out clubbing one day and Dougie invites himself along. She's there with her other younger mates and he turns up wearing a rugby shirt, sports jacket and kind of looking a bit like her dad. And so she's like, yeah, this is a little bit embarrassing, actually.
Sometimes you can be married to a man who's sort of even younger than you and he still turns up looking like a dad.
Yeah, but not in this case. She's like going, oh, I'm not really sure whether this is for me, actually. Whereas he is getting ready to go down on one knee.
Oh, no.
After going out with her for how long? 2 months? He wants to get a ring on that finger.
He knows she's only got a certain amount of time left to live.
I think that after his disastrous relationship the previous year with Debs, he's like, right, I'm gonna get me this woman. I'm gonna make her mine.
It's like Romeo and Juliet. So they both end up dead at the end.
Yeah. So he's preparing to propose to her.
Alert.
She's at the same time planning to dump him, which she inadvertently does in public over the pub's PA system from the back room. I can't remember what was going on there, but it was the classic, the microphone's still switched on. Yeah. Everybody can hear what we're saying, which I can, straight off the top of my head, think of about three times when that's happened in Coronation Street already. Dougie is left massively humiliated by this, as you would do, I suppose.
I wouldn't like it.
December that year, Dougie's like,
Forget it.
I forget this. I don't want to be in charge of the pub. I think he just wanted to one up Mike, really. But pub running is not for him. He says he finds out that the rugby club's bar, the lease is up for that. He's like, I'm a rugby man. I'm gonna go and work at the rugby club's bar. See ya. So he can't find a buyer for the Rovers. So instead he decides to try and auction it off to the highest bidder. And although Shelley, who's going out with Peter, and Gina, who's going out with Dev, are really trying to persuade their men to be the one to buy it, because there was a lot of animosity between Shelley and Gina, and they were both like, I'm in charge, no, I'm in charge. Yeah. And this was their opportunity to get their men to buy them the pub and have them as the landlady. It's ultimately Fred Elliott who steps back in with the highest offer. So over the course of 2001, that pub has gone from being 3 of them in charge to Duggie saying he's going to leave it, to then swooping in and buying it, and now he's sold it again, and Fred's back again. Mike's completely out of the picture at this point.
Mike's just like, I'm not getting involved.
This was the beginning of Fred Elliott's reign at the Rovers, but also the end of Duggie. This was, at this point already, I think there were rumours going along that John Bow had been axed from Coronation Street. It just kind of went to show that it could happen to anybody at this point. Duggie was riding high. He was the second most featured character in 2001. He'd been brought in as this guy who was supposedly in here to, bring back the alpha man to Coronation Street. There was going to be, he was going to be a real focal point of the show. Gone. In 2002.
No one's safe. That's what they need to bring back.
Yeah, just a little bit of fear.
I mean, I don't like to think of the actors living in fear. I think that's an awful way to be. But jobs on Corrie are very rare for actors. To be completely safe for so long in one job. So, do we? I don't really want people to be scared about their jobs, but I kind of want, a bit more turnover.
This was all a bit of a controversial period in the show anyway. This is when Jane McNaught was producer, who I think she ruffled a few feathers, it's fair to say, with some people behind the scenes. And she axed John Bow literally days before she was sacked herself for supposedly Corrie not performing well enough against these senders. She did impose a new pay regime, apparently, reduced annual retainers, there were stricter contracts, so
she wasn't popular.
She was
with
not
the
so popular, no. And she's like, well, I'm gonna get rid of Duggie, and this is his ending storyline. And we know how it all ended. But
doesn't that go to show that there's really no great strategy for a producer when it comes to the cast? Because, Ian McLeod has been accused of overseeing a decline in Coronation Street, which I think is a natural decline anyway. I don't really think that there's much you can say about. Except it's inevitable that viewing figures are going to go down. But the one thing that people say about him is that he's very good at a good relationship with his cast, and a lot of they really feel safe in his hands. And then you've got this woman who has come in and basically been a bit of a scary lady.
Yeah. I guess if your job is to get things moving, ruffles and feathers, get people talking about Coronation Street, make some changes if EastEnders is doing well.
I don't think that Ian McLeod was ever brought in to ruffle feathers and shake up the regime. I think he was brought in as a bit of a steady hand.
And get rid of the darkness left by Kate
Oates.
I
don't think that. I think you can say what you like, but I'd rather everyone was happy and secure. Really, I guess. But also I wish that there was more, like I said, more turnover. I wish that people felt like they could leave. Because it feels like it's a bit backed up, isn't it? I don't know.
Anyway, how did Duggie end up going? Well, this whole rugby club deal doesn't work out. He finds out early in 2002 that he's been gazumped on it.
We got gazumped, didn't we?
We did once upon a time. He ends up dating Sunita again when she invites him round for dinner, and they finish up in bed together. So whatever trick he used with Deb that previous year, 2 years ago, certainly did well again for Sunita. And Sunita the next day basically goes around telling her mates what a great shag Duggie is, and she decides to stay with him.
I wonder what it was. Maybe he was super into... What was this year? Was this
2002?
Oh, he probably watched The Matrix or something.
That was 3 years ago.
I know, but it gets him in the mood.
Yeah, but by this time, The Matrix Reloaded and Revelations had come out, and if that's not going to make you go a bit soft, I don't know what will.
I can't believe it.
So, during a pint with Richard Hillman, here he comes in at last.
Not
Richard Hillman. Yep, Tricky Dicky. They basically, there was a story one episode when a blood donation van comes on, parks up on, I think it was Rosamond Street, and a load of the characters go in there, including Dr. Matt, who ends up fainting while he's giving blood.
Bloody
but anyway, because they're both roughy-tufty guys, Richard Hillman and Duggie Ferguson go and do their bit.
They get drained completely.
So they go
Prove
for
their
a
masculinity.
post. Exactly, like, I don't need this.
A post-blood draining biscuit.
Drink.
Oh.
And Duggie shows interest in this business opportunity that Richard's talking about, doing up a property that Richard had inherited because of he was a property. What was his job? What's it called?
Social worker.
No, he wasn't. That was his original role, the actor. What's it called when you nick houses off, when you buy houses off old women? But anyway,
Shark.
He was investment financial advisor guy who basically told old women, sell me your house, you can still live in it, and I'll get it when you die. So he got this massive luxury he had this massive building that he wanted to turn into luxury flats, the Ridings it was called. Pair become business partners, despite Gail warning Richard about Duggie, knowing that he's a bit of a trickster. And Duggie says, look, if Duggie reckons that he can make a killing on this, he knows a good business deal and he sees it and he thinks this is it. He thinks that Richard is out of his depth on this, but it turns out that Richard certainly comes out on top. Duggie tells his builders, right, do the work on the cheap here. Make the flats look good. Use cheap materials. Anything that's going on behind the walls, make it as cheap as you like.
No one would ever do such a thing.
Let's cash in on this.
No, that's terribly unethical.
I know. Well, Duggie didn't care about this. And then we have a scene one day when Duggie and Richard and a few of the other guys are doing this after-hours card school at his flat, and Richard sees that Duggie has a massive wad of cash there that the tax man doesn't know about. So Richard's quite interested in getting his hands on that cash himself.
Shut up.
Richard starts to think that Duggie is ripping him off, which of course he is. Yeah. And then he starts to increase his visits to the flats with Duggie working there. One night, one fateful evening, Duggie follows Richard to the flats. The pair argue. Richard pulls out of the deal and Duggie's like, no, please, I need this. Change your mind. But then he is foisted by his own petard by falling through a wobbly banister made of probably cheap old MDF, falls to the floor.
I thought it was made of
stories
spaghetti.
Below. Maybe it was.
Held together with super glue.
Wet spaghetti at that. Cooked spaghetti.
So, bolognese.
Thinking that Duggie is dead, falling down a few stories.
Well, I would die.
Fair conclusion to come to.
I'd just give up.
Well, we're not tough, roughy-tufty guys like Duggie is.
No.
He's used to taking a few knocks on the rugby pitch. We're delicate.
Just a weak and feeble woman.
I've got no excuse. Weak and feeble teacher. So Richard pockets the keys to the flat. He literally roots through his jacket, takes the keys, goes back to Duggie's flat, finds this massive wad of cash, goes back home. The next day, he and Gail go to the flat and discover, in inverted commas, Duggie's body. What? Oh my gosh, Duggie, what has happened to you? Oh, he's dead. But the real grisly bit of this, and I love this about his death, is that Duggie has crawled into one of the side rooms overnight. So he was really clearly still alive when Richard was going through his pockets, and this obviously sets Richard up on his serial killing spree, although that is a tale for another day. But yeah, Duggie was his first victim, although people who say that Duggie was killed by Richard,
it's like Pat and Michael, isn't it?
He was just left to die.
It's the same thing that happens with Michael Rodwell when Pat Phelan saw him having a heart attack and let him die on a pallet.
Exactly. So that's the end of poor Duggie. As we said earlier, Tom didn't even bother coming along to his funeral. Maybe the actor didn't fancy it. I don't know. Don't think it would have added much, to be fair. The police are satisfied that the death was an accident, and Richard, although guilt-ridden, gets away with it. And so ends the story of Duggie Crusher Ferguson.
Boo.
Probably should have been better if he'd have been crushed at the end. That would have been quite poetic, wouldn't it? Maybe if like a bit of ceiling, had fallen in on top of him.
Yeah, like a chandelier.
Yeah, anything really. I mean, the whole place was made of cheap building materials, and I think having Crusher being crushed, I think there could have been a lot of mileage with it.
I think by that point everyone forgotten his nickname.
No, they didn't, because he had some flowers at his funeral. He had a big Crusher wreath.
Did he have that on his gravestone?
Probably did.
What
Don't
do
know
you
whether
want
we
on
actually
yours?
saw it.
What do you want your nickname to be? Michael whatever?
Teacher. Sad, isn't
God.
it? Podcaster.
Well, that's all right.
Oh, okay, I'll go with that then.
You want a little microphone or something on your gravestone? Do you want a picture of all your cats?
I don't really, because, as we said, a lot of our friends and family still don't know that we do a podcast, even though we've been doing it 12 years. And
that'd be quite funny.
That would raise a few questions.
Maybe we kill everyone else first.
Maybe you could, maybe one of our real super duper listener fans could compile a list of our best bits. We've never done, a best of.
No.
Other podcasts sometimes do this, don't we? But
we don't.
We tend to go long.
Because everyone's great.
Every single episode is pure 100% gold, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, if somebody recorded a compilation of Conversation Street best bits, and if there was a little microphone on my gravestone, we could push it, and then it would say it.
No, my idea is that you just have some kind of solar powered battery hooked up to every single episode of Conversation Street, played on a loop, and it just plays.
Well, by the time I die, hopefully,
you
could probably do it now. But I'll have a futuristic gravestone that can do all of that.
Maybe you can appear as a hologram and be like, "This is why I think that." What's this? Who's the guy that you like?
The guy that I like.
The one that everyone hates.
Reg Holdsworth.
This is why Reg Holdsworth is the top 3 in my top 3 characters of Coronation Street in all time.
I don't think he's that. Not quite, but.
Okay, well, I have to think about it then.
Right, so John Bo's axing was announced in The Sun on the 22nd of October 2001. According to a source, it was a real bolt from the blue. John was enjoying work on the street, and only last year he'd landed a new 2-year contract. His future looked cast iron, but it just shows that no one is safe.
So you fired him with a 2-year contract?
Well, I guess that he signed the contract in 2000 that kept him going to early 2002, and that was it. I don't get it. I don't know what Jane was thinking when she got rid of this character who had so much promise.
Okay, but the question is, this is what one of our big criticisms of Uncle Stephen was as a killer character, is that he didn't kill a main character.
No.
And so the fact that his, Richard Hillman's reign of terror began with killing off a fairly significant, if short-lived character, that really did set the sort of the no one is safe on
or behind the camera or in front of it.
Exactly. And I think that sometimes you have to make sacrifices like that, and it's a shame when the actors aren't on board. But sometimes it works really well, because an actor might say, "Look, I want to leave," and they kind of come to a mutual agreement that they're going to kill them off. Yeah. I think it's really sad when somebody wants to leave and they get killed off. I think it's worse when you don't want to leave and you get killed off. But I also think that Coronation Street's not employment program for actors. It's supposed to be an entertainment show.
Yeah, exactly.
So as much as personally I would never want to be in a position where people are getting fired that I really like, at the same time you've got to be a bit more ruthless than I think the current producer has been. I just don't see what the reasoning behind this. A Corrie spokesperson at the time said, John's been a great asset, but it was felt the time had come for the character to move on. I don't get it. Don't know. I think, do you think Duggie Ferguson would still be in it now?
I mean, he absolutely could be.
What kind of a person would he be? How would Corrie be different? How would Corrie be different if he was still in it? I mean,
I suppose they'd have to pair him up with somebody. They could have brought Tom back.
Gail.
We haven't played by a different actor.
He'd be shacked up with Gail.
Do you reckon?
Yep. Everyone gets shacked up with Gail eventually. And she kills them.
I'd just like to see, Len Fairclough was in the show for, 23 years or so. So he could have done it. Maybe we could have had Duggie Ferguson cancel a storyline. If she's a business, he could have. The world was his oyster. It was certainly not time.
I know, but that's what made it impactful.
It did. And also, of course, we were only a few years away at this point from Mike Baldwin going. Maybe it was felt that, because you had Mike and Fred, who were both beloved. I mean, Mike had been in the show for, 25 years or so at this point. Fred, maybe not that long, or definitely not that long, not even 10 years at this point, but he was utter icon already. Maybe it was felt that the street didn't need another character like that, but sadly, both of those two were gone within, 5 years of Duggie, and the street was left without that kind of character.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Do you think that, after all this, that Duggie Ferguson should be considered a villain?
No.
He's on, I don't know whether anyone has ever seen the Villains Wiki. Have you ever been on Villains Wiki? It's
No.
got villains from all forms of media.
Oh, nice.
Like,
Am I on there?
I don't think they've got a podcasting
some people consider me to be the villain of this podcast.
But yeah, he's on there as a villain. I get it. But I still can't help thinking. When I think of him, I think of him smiling. I think of him being a very convivial sort of host of the Rovers.
I think I've got this thing when you bring a new character to Coronation Street. I think the first 6 months are like, a grace
make or
period.
break,
No, not make or break.
Oh.
Just whatever you get up to in your first 6 months, I'll overlook it because you're probably not going to be that character.
Oh, I see.
If you're a long-standing character, I think you're probably going to shake up and be somebody different by the end of your first year. They always like to bring people in, and they're very controversial, and they have larger-than-life personalities, but unfortunately, maybe fortunately in some cases, they don't carry it through. So the fact he came in and he was a massive arsehole to his son, that's kind of unforgivable, except for the fact that you have to give them grace of 6 months. So if you take that out of the equation, how bad was he really? I don't know. I mean, would we say Mike was a villain?
Well, yeah, and I think that... But I expect Mike's on the Villains Wiki as well. I think because you had these two... A lot of the story seems to be Duggie sparring with Mike, and in many ways they were just as bad as each other. Yeah. They were both underhanded, willing to play dirty to get what they wanted, and being able... so was Fred as well. And I think that seeing them one-up each other was just a lot of fun, and that's why I look back on him and his time as relatively positively.
Fred gets away with a lot because he was unlucky in love, and people give him a bit of a break because they feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I mean, Duggie was unlucky in love as well, I suppose.
But not as notoriously as Fred. No,
and he was going out with Sunita when he died. There's a sad scenes after on his death episode, and Sunita, I think, is maybe waiting for him to come to her in the flat, and he never comes. And Sunita was a real delicate flower, especially back in the early days, and so that sort of got a lot of sympathy for her. But yeah, I think the other thing that makes me think, oh, Duggie, was the fact that he was linked with Richard Hillman at the end, and this was the beginning, I suppose. I mean, we'd seen Richard in the months running up to this looking a bit desperate. Was this after the Christmas where he tried to smother Emily with a pillow? I can't remember. But the fact that this was the kicking off of one of Corrie's most infamously beloved storylines ever.
Infamously beloved.
If you're tied into that, people are going to look back on your character and go, oh yeah, they were good. I like them. But anyway, that was it. That was it for Duggie. Haven't got a whole lot more to say on him. I think we've covered him as we go.
He was in Emmerdale for like 4 years.
Yeah, he was.
Lawrence White.
Yeah, he ended up getting killed off in a quite grisly manner in that as well. I was watching this on YouTube the other day. So Lawrence White was, we obviously don't watch Emmerdale, so I can only go by what I've read. But he was the owner of Home Farm, which was the big old.
Oh yes, the main one.
The main thing in Emmerdale, and so he was quite well off character there, I guess. But yeah, he gets killed in a car crash when his psychotic grandson takes the wheel. So I think his grandson is having. Going to say his wife or his girlfriend driving. I might be completely wrong there. It was a woman, and they're driving through the country.
Typical. And blame the woman.
And this grandson takes the wheel and then steers in front of an oncoming lorry. As he'd taken the wheel, Lawrence, so John's character, takes his seatbelt off, and then they get kind of blasted off the road by the force of this lorry. It's kind of twizzling through the air. We don't see this happen, but Lawrence gets catapulted out of the open window, and so he's found on the grass.
Oh no!
Dead as a post.
Dead as a post.
Yeah, thank you for reacting in a suitable manner. And anyway, so he didn't have much luck there, really.
It's very unlucky to get killed.
Twice in a soap, twice on a TV soap. But oh well.
He's Sean Bean in it, really.
Yeah, he is the Sean Bean of soap. You're right. You're onto something there. He's done other things as well. He's done stage roles. He was Judge Turpin in Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street in Chichester.
Barber.
That's what I said.
You said Barmer.
Barber, yeah, Barmer is people who make barm cakes in Surrey. And he was in West End for that as well. Mostly now he seems to spend his time tweeting about big pharma conspiracies and anti-vax stuff on Twitter.
He's quit action. Everyone needs a hobby.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other actors.
His hobby is view giver online.
That's okay. There are loads of actors on Coronation Street who are now... I wouldn't necessarily like all their tweets.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, he's joined the Reform UK party.
It's a rich world we live in, isn't it? Full of different people with different ideas.
Yes, and John Bow is certainly that now. But you know what? Let him have his opinion.
It's a free country.
It's not tainted my opinion on Duggie Ferguson. I think he was cracking. Final John Bow fact for you to finish off this episode.
What is it?
His wife played Toya's rape counsellor in 2001.
Wow.
So I think that was a bit of nepotism, maybe getting her in the show there. Or maybe he married her, maybe he met her actually.
He was like, you did such a bloody great job.
But also, she went on to play a general at the Weatherfield... No,
a doctor at the General.
A doctor at the General, Weatherfield General. In 2017 and 2020, so she treated Billy in 2017.
And
what?
She is...
What?
Sue.
Yes.
Cleaver.
Well, I wasn't about to get onto that fact. I was also about to say that she treated Sam in 2020. But yes, she's Sue Cleaver's half-sister as well. So it's all in the family.
Imagine the Christmases.
Oh, just imagine. So Sue Cleaver is...
Maybe she'll give him a copy of the book.
half-sister. So.
Her book?
Yes,
she's writing.
Book, maybe.
Anyway,
thank you very much for your contributions to today's episode, Gemma.
I've enjoyed this.
And your hard-hitting opinions on Duggie Ferguson. But it's okay, because, as we have established, you didn't watch him very much. You don't watch classic Coronation Street. You got a bit of a memory of him, and now hopefully you are informed, same as our listeners. I don't know who will listen to this.
You've done a very good job. I think you did a really good job.
I don't know who listens to this kind of thing. Like, if you've got a character that's like, I didn't watch them, do you listen to a character profile to find out about them? Or do you like go, oh no, that's not going to ring, that's not going to... It's not going to speak to me because I don't know who they're talking about. Or...
You know what?
Are you the sort of person who listens to this way? Or are you sort of the person who says, I don't know that character, I'm going to listen and find out about them? Because
there's all kinds
I'd much rather do that than just go onto Corriepedia and read it.
Yeah.
Corriepedia... Or maybe just nobody listen to this, I don't know.
Why would you not want to go in Corriepedia? They're always the first place to go.
I got a lot of this information from Corriepedia, I have to say. They do a jolly good job there.
But if you want somebody to just say it out loud...
If you want somebody to say it out loud and have interjections by their coughing wife...
idiot women.
Yeah, then Conversation Street is your place. Here every week. Right, that's it. We're done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Write in your opinions on Duggie Ferguson.
Tell us your favourite memories.
Did we miss anything? Has he been grossly misrepresented by the podcast today? Do you look back on him and say, no, why would anybody look back on Doug Ferguson with any kind of fondness? He was a git. Write in, let us know. If you listen to this on YouTube,
please
put a comment there. That'd be lovely.
Use the subject header gitconversationstreet@gmail.com.
Do it. Right, we'll be back this weekend with our hard-hitting views on this week's Coronation Street. But until then, goodbye from me.
Bye.
Goodbye for Gemma. Send her your good luck wishes, everybody.
Good luck, Gemma.
Get well soon. Good luck in getting well. Is that what you say?
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.
Good luck.